so much for having me, Toby and Mel and everyone at Keela. Thank you so much. Today we're going to do things a little differently, and Delaney as well. Hey, Delaney. We're going to do things a little differently. I'm going to give you ways to actually write on my slides, because why not? So you're going to get to do that, and I'm going to put this into the chat right now. So you get to go there, and then when we come to slide 5, you get to write on slide 5, and then there'll be other slides you can write on later. Just so you know, super excited about having your participation, your ideas, your vision for the future here today. So I'm going to just go to the slideshow for a second, and then we're going to go back down to this. So let's see here. All right. Resisting work. Laziness does not exist. And if you see art in today's presentation, it is art that I have made during quarantine, because that is one of the things that I did. Right now, I am on unceded Lummi land, and I usually work on unceded Chinook and Multnomah land. And I noticed somebody else was doing a land acknowledgement in the chat. So if you would like to acknowledge the land that you're on in the chat, please feel free. So I start all of my presentations this way now, and I'd like to encourage you, when you're listening to a presenter, to ask them to do the same, or if you're a presenter yourself, to do this, because there's a reason that I'm sitting here right now, and it's because I am a temporarily abled, cisgender, femme-presenting, bisexual, white-appearing, middle-class woman who benefits from systems of oppression that privilege my skin color, body shape, economic and educational background, age group, and geographic location. Because of intersections of oppression, I was able to go to a private liberal arts institution, and I live on unceded Multnomah and Chinook territory. The work I draw from is from radical feminism, socialism, and post-capitalism. I'm not objective because objectivity is a myth. So let's all get free. Very American thing to say, let's get free. Here we are. So in the meantime, as was shared, I have for 10+ years helped incredible nonprofit folks go beyond their goals in fundraising and their jobs. And I love creating online community. And this last year, we did just that with the New Power Fundraising Conference and the conference I did in March called The Party at the End of the Patriarchy. And we're going to probably do that again at the end of the year. If you'd like to join us, if you'd like to learn more, you can check out my website, mazarinetreys.com or wildwomanfundraising.com. And if you would like to have a chat with me, I would love to talk to you. So I want to hear how the last year has been going for you and what you're working on. So feel free to put into, I'm going to put this into the chat, bit.ly MT330, the capitalization is important. And I would love to connect with you because it's all about creating community. Thank you so much, Irene. Thank you, Dana, the land of the Wabanaki peoples. You're welcome, Mel. I'm so glad you like this, Alethea. Anyone who wants to chat, just get in there. And if you're just joining us, you may need to get the link to the slides again. And so I'm going to put that right here in the chat for you. All right. How are we doing right now? I want you to see this Karl Marx little Capital Volume 1. It says, we'll be closing at 5:30 due to nobody wants to work. And I feel like this could also apply to the nonprofit sector because we make so little, a lot of us. And why should we suddenly magically be over this whole time? Like, if you're on the West Coast like I am, you had fires to deal with. If you're also in Denver, you had fires last year. There's the pandemic and the ongoing, global unrest, and we had open fascism in our streets. So this is the part where I get to go out of presentation mode, and you get to go right in here and write how you're feeling on the slide itself. So feel free to just get in there. I've already just put it in the chat and just type it in. Yeah, fucking tired. Need rest. Yep. tired, curious. Another person said anxious and stressed. Another person said guilty and tired. Yeah. Another person said okay. Another person said frustrated, overwhelmed, apprehensive. I love it. And if you want to write more than one thing on a slide, I mean, on a little post-it note, go for it. Doesn't have to be just one thing per slide. I mean, per post-it note. Still optimistic, lonely. Yeah, me too. Yeah, determined. Thank you everybody for sharing this. I'm just loving watching you write. Hopeless. Yeah, this climate crisis is really getting scary. I don't know if that's what makes you hopeless, but that's me hopeless a little bit. Creative. Yes. Here's a fun fact. Did you know that trauma and creativity light up the same part of your brain? And every time you do something creative, whether it's gardening or cooking or making art or dancing or whatever, it actually heals your brain without words. Isn't that cool? Hopeful. Guilty of being lazy. Oh, we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about that today. What if laziness did not exist? Scared of seeing people again. Yeah, I had my first post-pandemic handshake, well, like post-vaccine handshake in June, and I was really freaked out. You're not alone. You're not alone. No motivation at all. And why should you have it? Like, this has been a really, really hard time. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, so much for sharing this. This is, need rest, nervous, and more hope. Yeah, there's all the feels here. Thank you so much for people sharing how you really feel anonymously. I really, really, really appreciate that. And feel free to go back to this and add more things if you want to. I'm just going to take a quick look at the chat and see if anybody shared stuff there as well. Oh, Christy is here in unceded Abenaki land. Nice to be here. Thank you, Christy. Laura said tired but happy. Wendy said, I'm tired of the personal professional roller coaster ride, right? Like, who's taking care of us, right? Angie said, excited because the visions in our eyes are bright. Yes, so beautiful. I love it. I love it. Everybody, thank you so much for sharing this. I'm gonna keep going on the slides, and we're gonna have jokes today because it is a very depressing time. So what I am seeing is it's always mental health tips and never here's less work and more pay. What's up with that? Why would they tell us to have a personal solution to a structural problem? Well, it's called, well, we'll talk about that. But anyway, this is why we're making these jokes. So, professionalism. All right. So professionalism oppression defined is ideological, don't be late, women are dramatic. Institutional, you don't look like their unconscious image of a leader, so you don't get promoted. Interpersonal, leave your personal life at home, don't cry at work. And internalized, I am lazy, incompetent, over emotional, and inefficient. So these are some reasons why you might be feeling lazy, or you might be feeling like you can't get anything done, or you might be feeling like you're not allowed to be who you really are at work. And there's a reason for this. And that reason is that oppression is part of white supremacy. And like basically professionalism is part of white supremacy. So our unconscious image of a leader is in fact, the person we're all never going to actually get to be, because that person is a perfect person who doesn't really exist. So you might be doing internalized depression, you might be doing, experiencing externalized as well. And just know that this is a lifelong process of just sort of recognizing what's inside of you and what's outside of you and working to shift that. But I want to let you know right now that you are not lazy, because laziness does not exist. And you deserve rest just because you're a person. So basically we're encouraged to do individual solutions instead of structural analysis. And here's a joke for you. Oh, you're experiencing a structural problem? Have you ever considered trying different personal choices instead? Right? So I attended a basic income conference in June on Zoom. And one of the things that all of these mayors who signed onto this petition to say, yes, we should all have basic income, said was, if anyone is experiencing poverty, that is a failure of capitalism. It is not a personal failure. And I'm going to repeat that for you. If you are not as rich as you'd like to be, and you're worried about the future, and you're wondering how you're going to retire, that is not a personal failing. That is a failure of capitalism and the current system that we live in. So stop blaming yourself. This is not your fault. And so because of neoliberal individualism, we see government telling us all to recycle and take shorter showers when 71% of pollution is by 100 companies. Like, we should all be focusing our efforts on them. It's like, yeah, I used a plastic straw. Is the world gonna end? You know? Maybe nonprofits want to do a one-off DEI workshop instead of looking at the structure of the organization, the leadership, and the board of working to make structural change. A lot of that doesn't happen because people don't know how it could happen, and they're just like afraid of saying, I don't know. But other times it's just like, they don't want to disrupt the status quo, right? So maybe you've treated yourself like a machine. Maybe other people have expected you to just be a work machine, just get over the pandemic, you know, get that work done no matter what else is going on in the world. So these are some things that may be why you're tired and why you're overwhelmed and why you have hope, but you're also hopeless, because there's tiny little things that are changing, but it's still a really big problem. And if I can make you feel better a little bit, I was talking to an astrologer friend the other day, and she said, we're in the middle of a new 200-year cycle. We are just beginning. This is the birth, and the birth is ugly, and it's covered in slime. And we're just like, oh, this is hard. It is hard, but it's also a wake-up call, and things are going to change drastically in the next 20 years. And it could be really, really exciting time to start making structural change. So today we're going to cover how bad things have become, which we kind of already just did, the trends that'll see the situation worsen, the imagination required to dissolve this psychostructure of capitalist realism. I know it's a lot of big words. Stay with me. I'll try to make this as simple as possible. I just read a lot during the pandemic and so much more comfortable with these words than I used to be. We can escape neoliberal capitalism because it is literally killing us. So laziness does not exist. We're going to give you some concrete tools, you know, how to take back your free time. Never checking your email past 5 is one example, and how self-management becomes self-exploitation. So I'm super psyched that you're here. Here's some more jokes for you. How bad have things become? Bosses, you don't need a union. We're all family here. Right? And we've seen some people, like at Planned Parenthood in Denver, Colorado, for example, try to organize unions, and they succeeded, but it was a really big struggle. So nonprofits are doing this, and this is one thing that we can do. So anyway, I'm gonna keep going. How bad have things become? Wow, another day pretending that unspeakable human suffering isn't happening throughout the country while I do my stupid little email job I can't afford to lose. So some of us feel like this, like there's just so many global things happening, but we also have been doom scrolling. So there's also a lot of good things happening, and we don't necessarily see that. And so if you're feeling hopeless and you're feeling like, I cannot exist in this world anymore, I want to give you hope that there's a place you can go when you're done doom scrolling, because you should be informed but not inundated, right? So if you go to reasonstobecheerful.world, that is an excellent source of good news, and I'm going to put that in the chat for you. So reasons to be cheerful. That world for you. Yeah, pace of life doesn't want to stop for no one. Yeah, Yuri, I know, right? It's terrible. It's terrible. So that has given me a lot of good things to like share with people and make them hopeful about. And we do have to have the discipline of hope. because we've come too far and we will not turn around. So think about the discipline of hope. Feeling sad and depressed, you might be suffering from capitalism. So if you're feeling anxious, it could be because of capitalism. Capitalism is designed to get under your skin. We're talking increasingly, we have to work hard to survive. And then there's the hedonic treadmill, which a lot of us at nonprofits are put on. What does that even mean? So it's like this. Let's say, like a star getting a Golden Globe, and they're like, now I want an Oscar. You know, you get 50K in grants with a tiny budget, and the next year, your boss tells you, whether it's your board, your ED, or whoever, okay, now get 100K and not increase your budget at all. So it's like, okay, great. You outperformed our expectations. Now just keep performing feats of incredible, sacrifice. And yeah, and we're not going to give you any more money either, by the way. So that's what the hedonic treadmill is. And so if you've ever been on that, because I was, get off of it. Like, they need to understand that this is not about squeezing you until you're dry. Or as one woman like to put it to me, dragging you through the streets. Like, well, that just totally just makes you not this. Yeah, I'm so glad, Mel, that you wanted to see that link. Yeah, Laura, right? Like, this is a real problem, right? So let's keep going. Here's some context clues. We just keep having, an uneasy mix of brazen destructiveness and implacable self-confidence, convinced that we will soon be approaching the best of all possible worlds. It's the techno-optimism, which is problematic and unfounded. And so, yeah, I just want to give you a joke here. 5 seats in front, 7 seats in the middle, 5 seats in the back. Ekubaru, it's poetry in motion, which is terrible. It is a really terrible joke, but it makes me laugh because I majored in poetry. Anyway, but this is kind of like illustrating that point. Like, let's just have more seats. Let's just have more stuff. Let's just have as many things as we can. And now we're really reckoning with what the things that we have consumed have done to the world. Look at the Pacific Garbage Patch, case in point. So here's the trends that are going to see the situation worsen, right? As I said, unfounded. Yeah, always looking forward to a better conclusion mode. Yeah. Unfounded techno-optimism. So look at this. Who should the self-driving car kill? Mid-century futurists say technology will one day eliminate human suffering and enable us to live a life to its fullest, most joyous potential. But now it's like, should it kill a little baby or an old lady? Like, this is a real diagram. People are trying to decide this, and it's like, and we're working still so hard in these bullshit jobs. Like, what's up with that? So there's also media illiteracy that's spreading conspiracy theories and mistrust. People saying the arc of history bends towards justice. As they said on Key and Peele, no, it doesn't. Sometimes it goes like, it doesn't. So we have to keep pushing and we have to keep fighting for that justice. But it might just be that our sector is not ever going to be just based on what it's built on. And we might just have to take it down and rebuild. And what would that look like? Well, how can we cultivate our radical imagination? People think, oh, the public choice theory, the market will decide. No, it won't, because what we have is socialism for corporations and capitalism for everybody else. We saw this with the 2009 bank crash. People didn't get arrested. They just got bailouts. That's just a case in point. And during the pandemic as well, right? So, oh yeah, David Graeber, Christy, you get me. Yeah, so if anybody here hasn't read Bullshit Jobs by David Graeber, please do. It is so good. It has a section on nonprofit people, and it's just so powerful. Love it. I put that book in the chat if you want to check it out. I had to buy the book. That's how good it was. So one of the things that I learned from another book by Peter Fleming called The Worst Is Yet to Come, super uplifting, is that capitalism is being propped up by the voluntary sector, and capitalism actually depends on us, what we provide: trust, goodwill, and non-transactional relationships. So if that's the case, then it's possible that we've outgrown capitalism. And I'm not saying that you should never have an iPhone again. I'm not saying that you're responsible for living in this world that you were born into, and therefore you have no moral leg to stand on. That's a straw man argument. That's really not what we're talking about here. Instead, I'd like to ask you to consider with your radical imagination, what if we could take the best aspects of capitalism and synthesize them, and the best aspects of socialism and synthesize them, and the best aspects of indigenous cultures and synthesize them, and the best aspects of localism and synthesize them, and change our world into a place that really takes the considerations and the concerns of the most vulnerable into the account first. What if we could do that? And that's what I'm going to be asking you to write about in just a sec. So I want you to dream, what would a post-capitalist world look like? I put this brush here because I think a lot of us would make a lot more art. And wouldn't that be fun if we could make a lot more art, you know? Or maybe we just rest more. A lot of us here express the need for rest. Maybe you could just go into the woods, lay under this beautiful structure, and just peace out for hours. Wouldn't that be nice? If you wanted rest, I'd love to see you here, you know? Carl asked a really good question. We'll talk about that at the end, Carl, because that's a really good question. So now I'm going to ask you to go back to the slides, and here are some places that you can write. What would you do in a post-capitalist world? And here's some prompts for you. How would you live? What would you do? How would institutions operate? What laws would you see passed? I have so many ideas for all of these, by the way, but I want to hear your ideas. So feel free to just go in here. I've got 2 slides, just in case we run out of space on one. I want to see your radical imagination. Whatever it looks like, it could be tiny things like shorter work days. It could be bigger things like 2-day work weeks. It could be everybody gets money no matter if they work or not, because that's the considerations of the most vulnerable, you know, super young people, super old people who can't work anymore, you know, or people who have disabilities. Build accessible housing for all. Yes, right? We are in the sector because we have radical imagination, but sometimes it just gets beaten out of us, you know? Less fear. Yes. Prioritization given to families rather than how busy you are. Yes, I love that. And if there's no more room on this one, feel free to keep going on the next one. Yep, let's keep going. Transgenerational relationships. Yes, it's all about relationships. That's really, really important to me too. And it's something that we are totally isolated from, a lot of us in our daily lives. Shorter workdays and more breaks. Yep. Make period products free. Yes. More naps. Yes. We're going to talk about the nap ministry later on in the presentation today, and I'm really excited to show you that. Children wouldn't have lunch debt. People wouldn't go bankrupt for needing to get medical care. Exactly. So obviously you're in America and some people here are from Canada, and you know, I don't think people in Canada go bankrupt as much for medical care, which is pretty awesome. But yeah, definitely. I'm in America too. So thank God I don't need medical care right now. And it sucks that this is how our world is organized, and we could just make a better one. We're being asked to imagine that right now. Last year in the US and in Canada, people who needed it got checks in the mail. Okay, we didn't get enough money, but we got something, which makes a precedent, which is part of the discipline of hope, where I think, great, we have a precedent now giving everybody who needs it money. Let's just keep going. More real talk. Yes, grief would be normalized, and we would have rituals to support those grieving that are collective. Grief needs to be normalized. Absolutely. People would have time to grieve. Exactly. I have a whole presentation just on grief. It's something I've been really trying to look at in my own life in the last year. It is super important. No stigma around seeking support financially, emotionally, and mentally. That's right. That's right. Parenting would be separated from dysfunctional marriages, no economic necessity to stay. Yes. And we're working on that with the child credit in Canada and the US. And I know that that's increasing, which is exciting. But there needs to be more. I'd be a parent. Yeah, there's some people that just choose not to be parents because they can't afford it and there's no time, and no sexism would be nice. Yeah, how can we deprogram ourselves? Because I have sexism, I have misogyny. Like, how can we deprogram ourselves from that? And there's more here. I can't wait to see what else people wrote. I would dance and paint murals with friends. Yay! Study philosophy and other liberal arts that don't lead to a career. Yes! I'd be a part-time and then more present mama. Yes, I love it. I love it. Anyone else want to share? Go ahead, there's even more space for you. And I'm just going to take a look at the chat as well. I think people are putting a lot in the chat too. So, affordable housing, said Irene, no violence against women, food security. Yes. Angie said, that structure in the woods is amazing. I want one. Yes. Everyone has a voice at a table, Angie. We would all stay at the table until all voices are heard. Yes. But what is part-time now will be full-time, rest time for creativity and rest. Yes. Laura, exactly. I really think in this last year, we need more creativity because it heals that part of our brain that's experienced trauma. We could just keep having it. Verbal face-to-face true communication, the good and the hard conversations, and still walk away with dignity. Yes, Angie, yes. Neighborhood parties, more parties in general, music, dance, and art. Yes, I love that. That's what we need. I mean, that's also what we're craving after this year being alone, a year and a half, right? A lot of people there. No more multitasking. Yes, I hope everybody here is just focused and paying attention and not multitasking right now if you can. I think we would have more room for creativity and curiosity. Yes. Returning to the land and learning to connect with nature. Yes. More time in nature and embracing the land around you. Yes. This is so good. People wouldn't be afraid of being different beings, religion, sexual orientation, skin color, etc. Be willing to learn about different cultures. Yes. Ooh, we might take more time to share our stories. Yes. So I just love that everybody here is cultivating their radical imagination. This is exactly what I wanted to happen. It's so clear that you've already really thought about this because you instantly had something to say. And so one of the things that I want to ask you, instead of fighting against, what are we fighting for? And that's why I created the party at the end of the patriarchy, because that's what I feel like we're fighting for, is how do we get there? Having to learn every new media and social media technology for work. I don't know if that's something you want or don't want. More self-defined freedom, Wendy. Yeah, what does that look like? None of us will be okay unless we talk about what hurts. Heard that on a podcast. Yuri, absolutely. Because if we stuff it down, it never goes away. Yeah, I don't want to learn every new tech either. It takes away from personal connection. Exactly, Irene. Yep. Thank you everybody so much for sharing this. And I would love it if you took a screenshot or if you wanted to come back to this and just remind yourself what you wrote. Feel free to copy paste what you wrote and just put it in your desires folder, you know, like, yeah, go ahead and add it in the speaker notes. I don't even care. Like, this is something for you to remember about what we're fighting for, not just what we're fighting against. This can keep us going when things get tough. So the imagination we need is already here. You've just proved it. And here's what the Internet Hippo has to say. Turns out the best way to reduce poverty is give people money instead of inventing labyrinthine welfare programs that are more expensive and less effective. It's too bad we can't do that because inaudible. And that's just, yep. So now we're going to pause and breathe. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. One more time. Be with me here. Deep breath in. And deep breath out. Okay. Get your beverage of choice. All right, let's rock it. I just want to help you be present in your body before we go into this next part. It's really easy to tune out when there's a lot of words, and I want us to stay together. So why do we do all of these things that don't work instead of the things that do work? Because the nonprofit sector is built on white supremacy. And some of these features of white supremacy are urgency. This has to get done now or the world will collapse. Individualism. This has to get done by me. If I don't do this, no one will. And I used to fall in these traps as well. And I probably still do to a degree because I'm still unlearning this stuff. So if you go to this link and you can click on it, if you're already in the slides, you could read more from Tima Okun and Kenneth Jones about white supremacy culture in your organization and its antidotes. So I'm not just here to talk about problems. If you want to talk about solutions, structural solutions, they have it in this link. Highly recommend that. It's like a PDF that's maybe 10 pages long. It's not long, and it's going to give you a lot of aha moments. And when you have aha moments, I get really happy. That's my favorite thing, is aha moments. So check out that link. So how does self-management become self-exploitation? Basically doing your job and your boss's job at the same time. And in the 60s, most jobs are like top down, don't think, just follow orders. But in the 80s, employers realized they can squeeze more time and effort out of workers if they give them more responsibility. And then they did union busting. So self-managing teams and empowerment were mainly about transferring the role of middle managers onto the employees. Now everyone's a leader, everyone's empowered at work. Like, does anyone ever stop to think about what that means? Like, we've been in an era of self-exploitation on a scale never before seen, and it continues to this day. So our workday extends indefinitely. We become our jobs. The economy infiltrates life, the life process itself, which is scary. But it also makes sense, like, why people will say, what do you do as soon as you walk into a networking meeting, right? Like, they think that that's all that you are or all that you can be, and it's actually a really limiting way to look at the world. Yeah, The Worst Is Yet to Come. Excellent book. Had to buy it. Highly recommend. And there'll be more here from that book. So in the 60s, right, we had payroll departments and personnel, right? In the 80s and 90s, we started to pathologize the nature of the employee versus looking at the sick system. So that means they're like, oh, you're not motivated, there's something wrong with you, instead of, we are not paying you enough, right? Or we're not giving you enough vacation. So they developed employee engagement programs to revive flagging morale, but their covert MO was replacing unions that had fulfilled these functions. As neoliberalism spread, HR became a tool for pathologizing the unmotivated employee. And that's why Amazon, instead of telling people maybe we'll give you a bit more break, said, here's a mindfulness box. It's like, you kidding me? You know, they're not kidding. That's the sad thing. They're not kidding. So this is just one writ large example of how sick our culture has become. So rather than view unhappy workers from a structural perspective, like unfair treatment, low wages, boring job, they're gaslighting you. They're like, oh, it's your personality. No, it's your system. So HR has become the punitive arm of organizational power. And HR now is just there to protect your employer from discontented workers and enforce financial miserliness, which is really screwed up. And everybody here knows, I'm sure, that if you have a problem, don't go to HR. They're not going to help you. So that was depressing. Let's just breathe one more time. We're going to talk about how to break free. Okay. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. Okay. I'm going to get the chat here. Yeah, there's a dismantling racism link. Thank you so much. Right on. Thanks everybody for being friends together and helping each other with the linked resources. So here's some context clues for you. Excessive labor makes us sick, and we don't have to work as hard as we do, but neoliberal capitalism wants us to believe otherwise. And there's hope. We can escape, and let's explore how. So, take back your time. Often we take our work home with us. Think about it when we wake up, think about it as we're falling asleep. Put off with being friends and family for work, even if you're self-employed like me. I have done this. Don't pursue our hobbies because work takes over our lives. I've done this too. Measure ourselves in terms of our job titles, salaries, body shape, and so work even harder to get more and more and more. So under capitalism, for every anxiety, there is a product. You're like putting off your own satisfaction in favor of getting some faraway goal. And what does that even really get you in the end? If you sacrifice your relationships to get there. And that's the message of a lot of like 80s movies, but it's still true. So here's one thing you can do. Never check your email past 5. And there's a wonderful book called The Tyranny of Email, which I've already written a blog post about, which says more about this. But this is part of the Resisting Work book that Peter Fleming also wrote. Email makes you be always on. It allows the boundaries between work and personal life to erode to nothingness. So let your phone be a phone. Take your email off your phone. I dare you. I don't have email on my phone. This is participating in your own exploitation. Why? Because email is an instrument for spreading wage theft and unpaid overtime. % of workforce check email outside of office hours. That's you stealing from yourself. Email increases your workload and always subjects you to supervisor's gaze. How about that? How do you feel about that? Something to think about. You don't have to be always on. Work your proper hours. That's a movement in the UK. So Anjali Nathapadhyay has a wonderful podcast called Feral Visions. If you go to liberationspring.com or soundcloud.com/feral visions, you can listen to a lot of her concepts that have really helped me start to understand how we can have decolonial feminist alternatives to mainstream professionalism. And if you're a man, you can still be a feminist. And feminism is for men too. Feminism acknowledges that what we have right now hurts everybody. Yeah, feel free to just get in there, get that link. I've been listening to her during the pandemic for the last 6 months, and it's been life-affirming, life-changing. She doesn't have that many episodes, but each one is packed full of nuggets that I want to listen to over and over again to help deprogram myself about why do I think technology has the answer. She has a whole episode just on techno-skepticism. Why do I think that science was originated in the West? It actually wasn't. She has a whole episode on scientism. There's so many like things that she talks about that I just can't say enough good things about her podcast. And what I'll do is I'll just go on a walk or I'll go on a bike ride and I'll just listen. And it just really makes me think. And I go back home and be like, damn, I wish I'd been taking notes when I was on my walk, but it's okay. It's free. You can listen to it again and again. And so I had her speak at my conference. And this is one of the things that she said. Become skillful in cutting our losses in order to steward life-affirming possibilities. So maybe the losses are the current system. Maybe it's your current job. Maybe it's, let's do something else. Could you be a consultant? What could you do? I'm actually doing a webinar later this month on how to make more money as a consultant. So if you have a side hustle, come in. She said, let's not solar panel the Titanic or advocate for a woman of color captain of the Titanic. She's like, oh, just give the problem to, a person of color, they'll solve it. No, it's not their job to solve it. It's like everyone's job to solve the structural problem, which is the Titanic that is our system that's based on unjust structures. So she said, let's honor our iconoclastic potential in setting our own standards. We want to generate metrics that are ecologically respectful, humane, and dignified. So what would that look like? No commuting, work from home as much as you want, because studies have shown that when you commute, it's terrible for the environment. Not working after 5 p.m., fully enforced. In France, when you work for the government there, if you're on the phone after 5 p.m. at 4:55, somebody comes on the phone and says, get off the phone, like leave the office right now. It's like, that's how much they enforce that. Would it be neat if like people enforced our overworking tendency at our nonprofits like that? Like, I'd like that, because we have work and then we have stuff to do outside of work. And why should we be complicit in our own exploitation? If they give you too much work, that's the job's problem, not your problem. What could your new metrics be? Working more than 5 hours a day, 4 days a week. People already said this, in the little boxes. No more hedonic treadmill. More time, more hammock time, you know? Taking 2 months of vacation per year. They do this in Europe. A lot of people do. Revamping our culture to acknowledge our shared humanity, like time for family, as some people were saying. The structure of white supremacy we're built on, and fighting against and towards the party at the end of the patriarchy. So looking ahead. So this is another wonderful episode that blew my mind last year with Alnor Lada. This is something that I would highly recommend listening to on the For the Wild podcast as well, and I'll put this in the chat too. We can't make poverty history because history created poverty. So what that means is, for hundreds of years, we facilitated the transfer of wealth from the global south to the global north. And now we're dealing with the fallout from that. And one person said, how can we continue to have a nonprofit sector if we get rid of capitalism? And this references that. And he actually does address solutions in his podcast episode. And I'd recommend you listen to that as well. Part of what he said is part of the problem is the way that we respond to the problem. So if we see poverty and we say, well, let's just put a Band-Aid on it. Let's just give 10 people housing, right? Sure, that's a place to start for our houseless neighbors. Why isn't the government doing anything? Why are we expected to do something about this? You know, and we know the reason, Reaganism and, you know, government stepping away from providing services. We know that the government will go to the lowest bidder, and then we're not going to get our government grant paying us until 6 or 12 months after we do the work. And it like leads to more instability and insecurity for us as workers and managers, right? So check this out. This is very mind-blowing. Thanks, Carl, for that. Yeah, we'll talk about that. So disengaging from identifying with your job. Your whole life is more important than whatever is happening at work. Your cause will always be there. Your title doesn't really matter. Your work goals don't really matter. Your relationships, rest, satisfaction, joy, love, and hope are what matter. So laziness does not exist. There's actually a whole book about this. So if you want to check that out, Devin Price, Laziness Does Not Exist. I read it. I loved it. What they said was laziness is a concept that comes from Old English and Puritanism. And your achievements are not your worth. You want to focus on quality, not time spent at work. You don't have to save the world. Set information limits. And I know in a lot of our nonprofits, we're taught we do have to save the world, but we don't. And so just reading this book was a huge eye-opener for me in the last 6 months. So if you think you're not getting enough done, you're being told to think this by capitalism. We're all brainwashed by white supremacy. And so our org structures are steeped in this. As this is what this one Twitter person said. Lucky Heron said, remember, capitalism is working perfectly. You're supposed to be exhausted and worried you'll be losing your income and dying penniless. It makes it easier to treat you like shit and pay you less. If you're worrying about rent, you're not focusing on tearing down this unfair system. A lot of nonprofits think that they can't advocate for policy change, but you can. You can and you should get together with other nonprofits to do that, because policy change is how we're going to get out of this. So one of the things that Dr. Bayo Kamalafi says, and I want to share this with you, is the times are urgent. Let us slow down. So no matter how urgent it appears at your work, it will be there tomorrow. Your cause isn't going anywhere. So why does it serve you to stay longer and check your email at 7 o'clock in your bed on a Tuesday? So I want to share with you the Nap Ministry by Tricia Hersey. She says, our lack of imagination is intimately tied to our sleep deprivation. How can we imagine a world without police and injustice if we can't imagine resting for 30 minutes a day? We must be subversive and reimagine rest. Our creation of a liberated world depends on our collective rest. So if you've never seen this before, I want to introduce you to the Hikomi Method. It's super simple. The first part of the Hikomi Method is rest. If you never rest, you'll never get clarity. Never get clarity, you won't take the right action, and you'll never have satisfaction. So if you fully rest, Get clarity about what makes you satisfied, and you'll know the next right thing to do. Then you can take action. Then you can have satisfaction. I know this is a weird concept for some people, but it feels pretty logical to me. And I got this from a somatic psychotherapist several years ago who presented at my conference. And I was like, yes, this makes sense. So if you're not sure what to do next in your career or in your job, go take a nap, or maybe if you want to leave the sector, go take a nap and then think, okay, what's clarity? What's the clarity that I need? And then take action and then have satisfaction. So figuring out how to leave your job or making your job more bearable, right? When do you feel the most liberated? What are you devoted to? When do you feel most loved? What is the soul? What would a community that is cared for look like? And people are already starting to imagine this in the things that you wrote today, which is really, really beautiful. So this is me most of my element. I just got to do a speaking gig in upstate New York in June, and it was raining, and I was so happy to see me after the speaking gig in front of this girls' school. I was like, wow, I love this. I love being with people. This makes me feel so happy. This is me like in my element. It was also scary because of the pandemic, but I was just really, really, really happy. So I wanted to share this with you because what makes you smile so big? What makes you being a little bit scared, but a little bit excited? Like, think about that for yourself. Write it down. It's important. Think about what you'd rather pass off to somebody else. What is your red light thing? What do you find incredibly fascinating? What is your green light thing? When have you been most happy? Who do you want to work with? What do you need to be physically well? All of this is from the Laziness Does Not Exist book. Here are resources for unlearning oppression and our collective liberation. So we talked about the Feral Visions podcast. We talked about these two books, The Work Is Yet to Come and Resisting Work. Laziness Does Not Exist. White Feminism by Koa Beck is an also excellent book. The White Supremacy Culture PDF link that we had earlier with Okun and Jones. And then if you're really like Mazarine, I'm like not so sure that professionalism is stemming from white supremacy, I would like you to check out this link. Professionalism or Socialized White Supremacy by the Student Affairs Administrators and Higher Education Association. It's really powerful. So it's all here on the slide. Feel free to copy paste it, take a look. So next time somebody says, you're not being professional enough at work, which I totally got accused of when I was working full time. This is something that I would come back with. Like, what is professionalism? Why do you think that? I could just do a whole presentation on just professionalism and what's wrong with it, but we only have so much time today. We're almost out of time. So if you want support to push back, become a consultant or get a better job, this is what I help people do. I help people like get more money in their jobs or get more money as a consultant. So if you go to bit.ly MT free30, I would love to chat with you. I'm not getting any of the emails of people that came today. So this is the only way you'll be able to connect with me. If you want to just like a quick chat, I'm happy to do that with you. So that's that link. Check it out, get in there. I would love to chat with you. So here's some client results I got in 2020. My clients had like 143K month. Another development director got, 150K of tech donated for her school. And one organization raised 10K on Giving Tuesday within just one day. So I love to help people raise exponentially more money without burning out. So now we're going to have Q&A. We have about 6 minutes for questions. I just want to say thank you for coming today. And I'd love to chat with you about what you're working on.
Thank you so much, Mazarine. That was honestly so great. I love how you got everyone so engaged. I love how everyone was able to post on the Post-it notes there. I've never seen that before, actually. So that was fantastic. And I don't know about everyone else. I can't speak for everyone, but that was such an informative session, and I'm really glad that we had you on here today. I think it's something totally different than what we typically have on here. So I'm really happy that you were able to share your thoughts and opinions and get everyone talking about this really important matter. So really, really great. We did have a couple questions, although not too many, just because everyone was kind of engaging throughout. But I can't remember if you had gotten to Carl's question or not. That was a really, really great one. And I'm hoping that you have some more insights into what you think. The question was, how does the nonprofit sector survive without capitalism? That's where most of our funds are made possible. And I'm sure most of these people on the webinar are thinking the same thing.
Yeah. So in the current system that we have, it's hard to disentangle ourselves from capitalism. And so what we want to do is cultivate our radical imagination. And by that I mean, as I said before, take the best aspects of capitalism and synthesize them, the best aspects of socialism and synthesize them, the best aspects of localism, of indigenous culture, and synthesize them to make a world that we can all feel like the most vulnerable people are held up and said, let's consider their needs first, whoever they are, whoever is an oppressed people, whoever has been marginalized, let's look at their needs first. So that's what that means. And yes, Revolution will not be funded. Excellent book, Susanna. Again, that's another place we can start to cultivate our radical imagination by listening to the podcast, reading these books. Yes, Rebecca, exactly. We only need nonprofits because of capitalism, right? So what I'm saying is, this is a long-term, big picture structural solution we're talking about. It's not like, okay, I need sponsorships right now, but I don't want capitalism. It's like, no, that's not the conversation. Instead, we need to have the conversation of, how do we put pressure on our governmental institutions to take back these services? And maybe it's that we stop doing them and we say, no more band-aids, you have to figure this out.
Fair point.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah, philanthropy predates capitalism, Mikhail. Oh yeah, exactly. Exactly. It does. Philanthropy really does predate capitalism. If you want to look at the history of capitalism, oh my gosh, it's really fascinating. And if you go to Wikipedia about it, you'll see it only has existed in the last like 300-400 years. Before that we had serfdom, before that we had, like, you know, all of these other systems. And so we have this, what's called capitalistic sort of like fatalism. The fatalism, like there is no other system. Who told you that? Why do you believe that's true? What if it wasn't true? What if our world could look really, really different? Rebecca said philanthropy used to be mainly to fund and support the arts. Yes, but in the early days of the US, it was to fund people in the community that were having problems. It was like grassroots campaigns all the time. You know, like look at tithing in churches, like back in the 1400s, right? That's technically charity, you know? So there are some things to think about, you know, and I really appreciate people like responding to another person's question in here about, what about the person that like is still fixing your fridge at 5 o'clock? Like, you know, maybe they didn't have to start at 9. Maybe they started at 10. Maybe, you know, it's different for everybody. Maybe they only choose to work 2 days a week. And they have 10 people on their team, so they can all only work 2 days a week and still get paid really well. What if your nonprofit says they can't afford to pay you more? And what if instead you said, great, I'll work less hours and you can pay me the same amount? What if you're only getting paid $50 an hour or whatever it is, right? And then probably less, right? And then you're like, great, so I'll just work 20 hours a week. And why are they not okay with that?
What a world we live in.
No, we can get this. We can demand this. We can demand this. It's just a question of, how do we organize? And people are already doing it. There was a basic income like online conference that 20 mayors signed on, over 20 mayors signed on to have basic income experiments in their cities. This is already happening. You think that I'm a radical? This conversation is happening everywhere. This is the wave of the future. And we can ride the wave or we can resist it. What do you want to do? It's up to you. You know what? I'm not going to tell you what to do, right?
That's why it's important for people like you to have these types of webinars to get people talking, because that's how we build this movement, is through people such as yourself. So really, honestly, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, and Dana and Rebecca and Mikhail and like everybody who's commenting, like, and Susanna and Corey and Irene and Christina and Diana, everybody, and Wendy, thank you so much, and Toby and you, Mel, thank you for having me. Like, I know this is not the typical nonprofit presentation, but if we don't start talking about this, nothing is going to change.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and that's why we have you on here.
Yay!
I actually don't see any more questions, but I think that it's because you covered so much. And like I said, you've engaged with everyone throughout. So we're coming up on time here. So I'm actually going to close it off if no one else has any more questions or anything else to add. If you do, please feel free to pop it into the chat. I'm just going to close this off. But before we do sign off, I just want to remind you all that the next session of Key Labs will be not next Thursday, the following Thursday on July 22nd. That's at 2 p.m. PST or 5 p.m. EST. The session will be led by Alicia Hancock. She's the director of Hancock Creative, where she'll be leading a session that's titled Facebook Fundraising 101. And in the session, Alicia will walk you through the 3 steps to be a successful Facebook fundraiser. So that should be really interesting. I also just wanted to remind you all that today's session, and some of you asked if it's going to be recorded, and so yes, it will be recorded, and you'll also receive Mazarine's slide deck in a PDF form, definitely by the end of this week, hopefully by the end of today. And lastly, there's a very short survey that will pop up right after this session is over. So I highly encourage you to fill it out. It's only about 3 questions, 20 seconds of your time. And I'm sure Mazarine would love to hear what you have to say about her session. And with that, Mazarine, I'll let you have kind of the final words. If you had anything else that you'd like to share or say, please feel free to do so. And thank you again so much for everyone for being here, including yourself, Mazarine.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Toby. And thank you, everybody else, for being here and listening and engaging and starting to dream about other worlds. And I want to keep dreaming with you, and I want to invite you to my party at the end of the patriarchy at the end of October. I'm still planning it out. You are so welcome to be part of the community that makes this huge change to make a more just world, and I would love to see you there.
We will absolutely be there. Thank you so much for that invite.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much again, and enjoy the rest of your lovely Thursday, and we will see you all again at the next webinar.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.